Sally that girl in the kitchen. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sally that girl in the kitchen. In today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to make Sephardic Nut Filled Borrecas. Borrecas de Muez or Travados. They are known by different names depending on the region, but what I can tell you is they are absolutely divine. So if you've never had a true Sephardic-Turkish Borreca, well, you are in for a treat. But this particular Borreca is different from the savory ones that we tend to make, which are filled with potato and cheese, or we can make a spinach version or multiple different eggplant versions. There's so many different choices, even ground beef. But this one is actually filled with a mixture of walnuts and sugar and cinnamon, and it is drenched in this delicious syrup, and the flavor is almost reminiscent of a baklava. That's how yummy this borreca is. So I am super excited to teach you how to make them. So let's not wait another second and let's get started. For the filling of today's recipe, you will need 1½ cups of roughly chopped walnuts, ½ cup of sugar, 1/4 teaspoon cinnamon, and 1 egg. For the dough part of today's recipe, you will need 4 cups of all-purpose flour, a pinch of baking soda, ½ cup of sugar, 1 cup of vegetable oil, and ½ cup of water. And for the syrup part of today's recipe, you will need 1 cup of sugar, 1 cup of honey, 1 cup of water, the juice of half a lemon, 4 pieces of lemon peel, and 2 cinnamon sticks. You will also need some parchment paper, some measuring spoons, some dry measuring cups, and some wet measuring cups, a cutting board and a knife, a tool to squeeze your lemon with, which of course is optional, a bowl and a fork, a couple of large baking sheets, 2 large bowls, and a large fork and large spoon. You will also need a medium-sized pot and another large spoon, a strainer or a spider, and 2 large plates, along with a pastry brush, some oven mitts, and either a handheld roller or a rolling pin, both of which are optional, as you could make these completely by hand. So now that we have all of our ingredients and tools together, let's get started. The first thing we're going to work on is our filling. We're going to pour some walnuts that have been shelled onto a cutting board, and we are going to chop them up roughly. Then once you have chopped them, you're going to measure them out to make sure you have 1.5 cups. And then you're going to add them to a bowl, and right in that bowl, on top of your walnuts, you're going to sprinkle on your cinnamon. Then you're going to add your sugar. Then you're just going to mix that all together because of course you want that cinnamon and sugar well combined, well distributed amongst your chopped walnuts. Now, once you've mixed that all nicely together, then you can see that I have cracked an egg into a bowl. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that beaten egg right into this sweet walnut mixture because the egg will serve as a binder, and it's going to help my filling stay together and not just completely fall apart when you bite into these delicious nut-filled borrecas. So it definitely serves its purpose. Of course, if you can't eat egg, then you could technically omit it, but it really does wonders for your filling. So now all you're going to want to do is make sure that you incorporate that beaten egg really well into the mixture, because you want to make sure that all of your nuts get coated in this beaten egg and the mixture doesn't have any dry spots. And then once you've done that, you are ready to just put it aside and move on. So at this point is a good time to preheat your oven to 350 degrees to make sure it's nice and hot and ready. And now we're going to prepare our dough. So the first thing you're going to want to do is add your flour into a large bowl. Then on top of the flour, you're going to go ahead and add your pinch of baking soda. And then we'll also add our sugar. And then what I like to do is I like to grab my large fork, and then I use that fork to just incorporate those dry ingredients. Just make sure that that baking soda and that sugar is all well distributed amongst the flour. You want to make sure that it is very well combined. So you're going to grab your bowl, turn it a bit as you go, and then just mix this all together, making sure it's very well incorporated. Now, once those ingredients are well combined, you're going to pour in your vegetable oil. And then what you're going to do is you're going to use your fork to incorporate this oil. And you're just basically going to go around and around, bringing all of the dry flour in and making sure that all of it is exposed to that oil. So if you've watched me make anything with borreca dough before, I always use this process. I incorporate my oil into my dry ingredients, and then what I want to do is form these large pebbles. I use the side of my fork and just break up any of the larger clumps, and then I use the fork to also just scrape down the sides of my bowl, and that way I'm sure that all of my flour is being touched by the oil. And you're going to see that the more you mix and you use the side of your fork to break up any big clumps, you're just going to end up with a pebble-like mixture. Now this dough is very similar to the dough you've seen me make in my borrecas, where I fill them with spinach and cheese or potato and cheese or eggplant, my borrecas de handrajo, but this dough does not contain any salt at all, and instead it contains plenty of sugar. And of course, you saw me add that baking soda, so it really gives a different result. It's going to be somewhere between a borreca dough and almost a biscochito dough. It's a cross between the two, and once it's ready, it's going to be the perfect vessel for this delicious sweet nut filling. It's perfect. The texture, the consistency is absolutely perfect. So now I've incorporated all of that oil, and you see I have a sandy pebble-like mixture. So now I'm going to measure out my water, and I'm going to heat it in the microwave, but only for about 20 seconds or so. It's not a lot of water, and I don't want it piping hot. I just want it warm. Then I'm going to add it right on top. Then I'm going to start once again with my fork to just help me just incorporate that water and bring the ingredients together. And then once I start to see that the dough is starting to form, then I'm just going to wipe off that fork and I'm going to switch to my hands, and I'm going to bring this all together to form a dough. You're going to see it takes a matter of moments. It's just super quick, and the dough comes together immediately. And then I just use the dough ball itself to just pick up anything left on the actual bowl, and you can see just how quickly our dough has been formed. It's super easy. The dough has already come together, and it's very little effort. So our dough ball is ready. I'm just going to put it right back in my bowl, and then I'm going to grab a knife and I'm going to portion it. So what I like to do is I cut my ball down the middle, and then I turn it the other way and I cut it down the middle again. So I'm dividing it in 4 portions. Now this does not have to be precise. I don't like measuring or weighing. I just grab it, divide it in 4, and then from each 4th, I am going to form 7 balls of dough, because I am going to be making a total of 28 Sephardic Nut Filled Borrecas, Borrecas de Muez, Travados, and I just take each 4th of that dough and then I form it into 7 balls, all about the same size. And then of course, once I've done that with my first 4th, then I just do the same thing with the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and that way I have my 28 dough balls. My dough has been portioned, and I lined 2 large baking sheets with parchment paper, and now we're gonna start forming our borrecas. So there are two different ways to make these. You can use your hands or you can use a rolling pin or a roller. So to use your hand, you're just going to use the hard portion of your hand and your fingertips, and you're just going to flatten your dough out. And then once it's flattened out, you're just going to scoop up some of that delicious filling and place it in the center. And then once you've done that, you're just going to shape these just like you would a borreca. Now the dough is a little different in texture, so don't worry if it sticks a little to your counter. Of course, you could add flour to your counter if you prefer, but I'm using a quartz counter and I just love working right on my clean counter. And then you're just folding the dough over, and then you're going to fold the edges just like I do when I'm making a borreca that is savory, the same exact way. And then we just seal our borreca up, and then we just place it right onto our prepared tray. And then you can just use your finger to wipe off the counter, or of course you can grab some paper towel and then just wipe off the little bit of excess dough. And then that's it. You're ready to move on to making your next borreca. So the first one I did not use a rolling pin at all. I just used my hands. But for this one, I'm going to show you that you can do the same thing with a rolling pin, or like I'm doing here with a handheld roller. You're basically just looking to flatten out the dough and then just use your fingertips to shape it. You want a round or slightly oval shape, and then once you have your shape, you are going to proceed to fill it. Now you'll notice I'm using 2 spoons because since this is a sweet filling, it is a little bit sticky because of the sugar and the egg. So I use the second spoon to just help me spoon that filling onto my dough. And so once I have enough filling in the center, then I'm just going to do just like I did before. I'm going to fold the dough over, and I'm going to form that beautiful, very typical Sephardic-Turkish Borreca shape. Now notice I pinch the dough if it has any little cracks in it, because this dough is very forgiving. So as you fold it over, just pinch it if you feel like it's opening at any point, and it will come right back together. So now I'm going to do the process again. This I call the pinchifol. If you've seen any of my videos before, you know that this is the name that some friends of mine and myself came up with for this process, because it is a pinch and fold after all. So for short, we call it the pinchifol. So you can do your pinchifol, or if you're not comfortable with it, you could just seal the edges with the back of the fork. Just press down your fork against the dough to seal the edges together. The idea is to just form this little pocket and then put it on your prepared tray so it's ready to be baked. And then just wipe down the surface, and you're just going to repeat the process over and over. Once you get comfortable with the process, you can even flatten out a few at a time and then just fill them up. What I did was I split my filling in 2 so that I was sure that half of it was used to fill 14 and the other half is left for the other 14 balls, because I am making 28 after all. So I formed 14 of them, put them on my first tray, and then I'm just going to repeat the process over with the other 14 balls and the other half of filling. Now, once I have my 2 trays, then I'm placing them in the oven, and I'm setting a 15-minute timer, because after 15 minutes, I'm going to change the position of the trays. In other words, the one that was on top, I'll switch to the bottom, and then I'll set another 15-minute timer to allow them to finish baking. After the full 30 minutes, our nut-filled borrecas are ready, and they're smelling amazing. Well, they're almost ready, because you'll notice that I didn't give them an egg wash, and these, of course, are a little more pale because of it than your regular borreca that you would normally give an egg wash or sprinkle with sesame or cheese, depending on the filling. These we leave plain. Why? Because even though they already smell and taste amazing as is and look golden and just gorgeous, like I said, it's almost a cross between a bizcocho and a borreca. It is so, so good. But we are going to let them cool right on the tray. And then once they did, I combined them all onto one tray, because now we're going to form an amazing syrup that we're going to literally soak these nut-filled borrecas in. And that is really what is going to complete this recipe, because right now they're delicious. They're a nut-filled, sweet, delicious cookie, but they're not fully ready until we've given them that amazing bath in syrup. So hold your temptation to eat one, and let's get started on making our syrup. So the first thing you're going to want to do is slice your lemon in half, and then I like to squeeze the juice out into a bowl, because of course we could get a lemon pit or two, and you just want to make sure to remove that before you add that lemon juice into your pot. So you're going to squeeze half of that lemon really well, and once you've removed all of that juice and made sure to remove any pits, then you're going to add your lemon juice into your medium-sized pot that you have placed on your stovetop. Now, into that lemon juice, you are also going to add your water, and you're going to add 2 cinnamon sticks, and then you're going to add 4 pieces of lemon peel that you have removed from that same lemon that you used to get the lemon juice from. Just make sure that when you remove these 4 pieces of lemon peel, you make sure to remove that white pith behind it, because you don't want your lemon peel to be bitter. So once these beautiful aromatics are in, you are going to add your sugar. And then for this syrup, we are also going to use honey. If you've seen some of my other recipes that call for syrup, those other ones really are just made up of sugar, water, and either lemon or orange, depending on if it's my baklava or my tish bishti. But this particular recipe calls for honey. So it's going to be a thicker, stickier syrup. So I went over and grabbed a spoon just to help me get every little bit of that honey right into my pot, because I don't want to miss out on any of that delicious sweetness. And then I just give it all a little bit of a stir, and then I'm going to start to form my syrup. So I'm going to turn my stove on to low, and I'm just going to let these ingredients start to heat up and let that sugar start to dissolve, so that we start to form this amazing syrup for our Borrecas de Muez, because they are going to be so good. They're already smelling amazing, and this syrup is starting to smell already with the beautiful aromatics that have been added to it, that cinnamon, that lemon peel. So amazing, smells incredible. So you'll notice I put my borreca tray nearby, because soon these borrecas are going to be taking a bath in this delicious syrup. Yes, as if they didn't smell amazing enough already. So I have prepared a plate, and as you can see, I have my skimmer. And once that sugar starts to dissolve, you are going to notice that your liquid starts to come to a boil. So once you see that your syrup starts boiling ever so slowly, then you're just going to give it all a little bit of a stir, and you're just going to watch it very carefully. For this process, you have to stay by the stove. It is extremely important, because yes, those aromatics, they're really infusing that syrup, but you're going to notice that this syrup can very quickly overboil, and we do not want that. So once you see that it starts to get foamy and it looks like it's going to start to rise, then at that point, you're just going to turn your heat off, because you don't want to have to be worrying about your syrup overboiling as you're going to give these beautiful nut-filled borrecas a bath in this amazing liquid. So I turn my heat off, and you see all the sugar is dissolved. Those beautiful aromatics have really infused my syrup, and it's smelling amazing. There's no sugar lingering. So now you're just going to grab 7 of your borrecas, and you're going to place them right into this amazing syrup. And I'm going to do 7 at a time because I have 28, so I'm going to do this 4 times. And then with my skimmer, I'm just very gently turning them over, making sure they submerge, making sure that they are really just getting infused with this syrup all over. And then once they are in, then I'm going to turn my heat back onto low, and I'm just going to watch them. Now, what exactly am I watching out for? Well, I'm watching the edges, and I'm watching to see that they start to bubble up again, that my syrup starts to boil ever so slowly once again, because yes, this syrup will once again rise up in my pot. So I'm just waiting for that moment where my syrup boils again to make sure that they're really getting infused with the delicious flavor of the syrup. And then you see it's starting to get a little foamy up top. So that's what we're looking for. It's just starting to boil ever so slowly. And very soon, I am going to be turning my stove off once again. You see, it starts to rise, and that's when you know it's time to turn your stove off. So now your stove has been turned off, and then all you're going to do is flip these delicious nut-filled borrecas over, and then we're going to bring over one of our large plates, and we are going to start removing our borrecas from the syrup. So all we do is very gently grab that same skimmer, and we're just going to grab our borrecas, and we're going to place them on a large plate. Now, remember, as you remove them, you want to make sure that you're leaving behind those cinnamon sticks and that delicious lemon peel, because we are going to use this same syrup 3 more times. We're going to repeat this process a total of 4 times, 7 borrecas at a time, just like we did with this batch. Now, just remember, the key is to turn your heat on and wait until that syrup just starts to come to a boil and starts to bubble up and rise. And then when you see that happening, then that's when you know it's time to turn your heat back off. Then once you turn your heat off, then you add your 7 borrecas into the syrup. Make sure you move them around well so that they all get nicely submerged in the syrup. And then once you've done so, you turn your heat back on and you wait for the syrup to boil again. Once the foam starts to form and the syrup starts to rise once again, that's when you're going to turn your heat off, and then you will remove this second batch of borrecas and place them on your plate. Then I just brought over a second large plate because the first 14 filled up my first plate. So my second 14 will come onto my second plate, and they are looking absolutely gorgeous. So now you know exactly what to do with your next 14 borrecas. You are going to dip them in the syrup 7 at a time, the same way we did with our first 14, turning your syrup on and off as you go. And then once you get those 14 submerged, then you just remove all of them from the syrup, and then they are almost ready to be served. Just one step left in the process. So now that we have 28 beautiful Borrecas de Muez, all of them have been submerged in our delicious syrup, and they're looking and smelling amazing. We're just going to take that syrup off of the heat, and we are going to let it sit there and cool down. So it has boiled quite a few times, and of course it served its purpose. We have submerged all of our delicious nut-filled borrecas in it. It just completely enveloped our borrecas with that delicious flavor and those amazing aromatics. But as it now sits and cools, it's going to get even thicker. And so what we want to do is wait for our syrup to be cool and our borrecas to have cooled down. And then you're going to notice, you see how thick it is? It's just absolutely divine, and it smells just so incredible. I really wish you could smell this right now. It's just so absolutely delicious. So all you want to do is grab your pastry brush, and then all that's left to do is give them all just a little bit of brushing with that delicious thick syrup that has had a chance to cool down. And that's really just going to finish off our delicious Travados, our Borrecas de Muez, nut-filled borrecas, call them whatever you want. They are absolutely divine, and this just finishes them off and makes them absolutely delicious. So once they've all received some extra love from that lovely infused syrup, They are ready. They are smelling incredible. They look beautiful. They have that beautiful shine from that syrup that we added on top. But you are going to be so surprised with the texture because they still remain somewhat crispy. They're just absolutely divine. The texture of the dough is so good. And of course, that filling with walnut and cinnamon is very reminiscent of a baklava. It is just absolutely delicious. I cannot wait to try one. So I'm going to grab this one because it's looking really great and it's calling my name. And I'm not sure why I grabbed a plate because I am going to just bite right into this guy because really it is looking and smelling incredible. Wow. So good. The texture of the dough is amazing. Like I said, it's almost like a cross between a bizcocho and a borreca, and that delicious syrup and that nut filling is divine. So good, and it's just flaky. So tasty. So good. It's filled with those nuts, with that walnut and sugar and cinnamon. So good. And that syrup on top. And of course, that crusty little edge. It's just the perfect bite. It's absolutely divine. And everyone is going to be blown away. So good. As you can see, I cannot stop eating it. It is just absolutely delicious. It's just filled with those nuts and cinnamon. It's just so amazingly good. Good to the last bite. I'm not leaving a single piece of this. It's divine, and I know you're going to love it. It's just absolutely perfect. So how absolutely divine do these guys look? They are so amazing. The texture of the pastry is perfect, and that filling is beyond delicious. And of course, that syrup that we just bathed them in brings them over the top. They're super good, they're different, and they're really a treat. And of course, everyone is going to be in awe when you serve these because they're super different. And best of all, they are so yummy. Trust me. No, better yet, don't trust me. You're gonna have to try to make this recipe yourself. And of course, if you've enjoyed today's recipe, don't forget to like, comment, and share. I really appreciate when you comment on my videos, when you give me a like, and of course, when you share them with your friends. It really helps me, so thank you so much. And if you haven't already done so, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and to make sure to touch that little notification bell so that you don't miss out on all the amazing recipes that I still have coming up for you. And of course, be sure to travel over to my video tab where I have tons of recipes already there. Savory, sweet, desserts, breads, appetizers, mains, anything your heart desires, you're gonna find it there. And of course, if you're not already following me on social media, be sure to follow Sally That Girl in the Kitchen on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. And you can follow me as Sally That Girl FL on Twitter, Snapchat, and on TikTok. See you next time. Sally That Girl in the Kitchen.